is life to all who hear and obey. Your word endures forever.
Genesis chapter 4. Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. But Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" Then the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain, so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain made love to his wife, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Enoch. Cain was then building a city, and he named it after his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mejael, and Mejael was the father of Methuselah. Methuselah was the father of Lamech. Lamech married 2 women, one named Ada and the other Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal. He was the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all who played stringed instruments and pipes. Zillah also had a son, Tubal-Cain, who forged all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. Tubal-Cain's sister was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, "Ada and Zillah, listen to me. Wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times." Adam made love to his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, saying, "God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him." Seth also had a son, and he named him Enosh. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. The second reading today is Hebrews chapter 12, verses 22 to 24, and it can be found on page 1011 of the Church Bibles. "But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly. To the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel."
If you're visiting this morning, we've been doing a little series in Genesis. We've had a few weeks so far, and we're just up to Genesis chapter 4. That's our week with Cain and Abel. As a start, though, let me say this. Do you not think, this is something I've been reflecting on this week, that sometimes when we talk about sin, I think we have a problem. And I think the problem is this. No, we know sin is bad, that's what we're told, and yet sin is so easy. It's so easy to do. It's so easy to fall into. Often, actually, we find sin enjoyable. It feels good. And we often get what we want from it. Do you not think that? You might have been told something is wrong, but actually it's really easy to do that thing, and actually I quite enjoy doing that thing. So it might be when someone says, "You won't believe what I've just found out." And then they proceed to tell you that delicious bit of gossip. I gave some people a book recently, not because I thought they needed to read it. A friend had given me a book that he'd written on gossip, and I'd pass it out to some people. And one of the chapters in that says, "Gossip kills." And I remember people saying, "That's a striking title for a chapter." But we don't believe it, do we? Because gossip doesn't feel like it kills, it feels like it's actually really good. Or you've decided to watch pornography, and it's so easy, and it's enjoyable. And it feels good. What's wrong with that? Or you begin a relationship with somebody who's not a Christian, and you think, well, it's easy. It's a relief, actually. I find intimacy with somebody who loves me and cares for me. Is that not what you find sometimes? Sin is often so very easy. It feels good, and we don't often then see the bad things which happen. Sometimes we do. But there's not often a lightning bolt that comes from heaven and makes you realize that was a really bad thing, is there? And it can lead us, I think, in churches to sometimes think all this talk of sin is just a little bit over the top. It's too much. It's not that bad. Or maybe different but related. Sometimes we can have the impression, though, that sin is really bad, and in church here we're doing okay. But out there in the world, everything is terrible. People are awful. They are sinners. And because we are totally depraved, as the theologians might say, and there's nothing good, we think, how can anything good be done out there? And yet then we go out and we meet people and we think, well, I quite like that person. They're quite nice. They do good things. They make good things. The work that they do is good for our community and our society. They love other people really well. I know of students that have gone to university, and that's been their experience as they've lived with people who are not Christians, and they say, they don't seem as bad as I was taught that they would be. They do nice things. They're kind. They're loving. How can this talk of sin be true when good things happen? I don't know if you've ever had those kind of thoughts before. There's much more I think I probably could say there, but I think we kind of understand those kind of realities, don't we? And I hope that as we come to Genesis chapter 4, it will help us to actually navigate some of those ideas. How can we say that sin is so bad when often it feels good? And how can sin also coexist with good in society around us? Well, so firstly, the first point is this, to say sin is crouching at your door. As chapter 4 begins, now it happens after Adam and Eve have been expelled from the Garden of Eden. They've eaten that fruit from the tree they were told not to eat. God has expelled them from the garden, expelled them from his presence. And here are Adam and Eve expelled from the garden, and Eve has a child, has a baby, has a man. And you think, well, that's quite a good start, really, isn't it? That's what they were meant to do, be fruitful and multiply. Here they're having children, so she has Cain, and then she has Abel. Abel, he's into pastoral farming. He looks after the flocks, maybe cows or goats or sheep or something like that. Cain, he's also a farmer, but he's into arable farming. He planted the crops, the wheat and the barley maybe. Doesn't sound too bad, does it? And then as you read on, you see that these farmers bring something of their produce, what they have produced, and bring it to the Lord to make an offering to him. Again, it sounds good, doesn't it? Cain brings some of his vegetables or his grain or whatever it is that he's made. Abel, some of his animal in his flock, one of his firstborns, maybe the first calf or the lamb that a cow or a sheep had, and they offer it to the Lord. It's an offering, a religious thing they're doing. We're not told here why they did that, what was the impulse that made them want to offer this thing to the Lord, but they do. And that's where the problem starts, or at least that's where the problem comes to the surface. Because there was a problem lurking. We find that God looks on Abel's offering with favor, but on Cain's, in verse 5, but on Cain's offering, he did not look with favor. Now that's all we're told. The commentators speculate why God didn't accept Cain's offering. Some people say, well, maybe God doesn't like vegetables, he likes meat better. But I don't think that's right, because remember, God made Adam a gardener, and later in the Old Testament you see that there's, as part of the sacrificial system, you could bring animals, but there was also grain and crops that you would have brought as offerings. I don't think it's that. I think actually we learn a little bit more from the New Testament about maybe why God didn't accept Cain's offering. In Hebrews we read this, I think it's on the screen, yeah. By faith, Abel brought a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. It seems to be something about here. Abel offered his sacrifice in faith. Faith meaning he trusted in God. He was offering it as a trusting God. Remember, Abel was one of Adam's sons. He didn't deserve anything from God, and yet he offered his sacrifice, trusting him in God, not expecting to get anything in return. And so does it suggest that maybe Cain didn't do that? In verse 7, God says, if you do what is right, suggesting that Cain wasn't doing what is right. Suggests Cain wasn't in God's good standing. And in fact, when you look at his response to God not accepting his sacrifice, maybe you start to see that his heart was the problem. Where he becomes very angry and downcast. Speculating here, but maybe he thought something like this. No, I've given you some of my crops, God. How dare you not accept them from me? What more do you want from me? You see, making his offering in a sense of saying, look at what I've given to you, aren't I good? And when he doesn't get what he wants, he's mad. You see, Cain and Abel, they were both sinners. They both had rejected God, and it seems like Abel knew that. He had nothing to offer God other than just saying, here's something from me. I'm sorry I've rejected you, maybe he was saying. But Cain thought God should accept him. Look how good a person I am. And God says no. And God's completely at liberty to accept or reject Cain's offering. Doesn't have to accept it. But sin means often that we think God should just welcome us in anything that we do when we do it. And Cain is angry that God doesn't do that here. And here we start to see the beginning of the expression of sin in Cain's life. Angry that his offering is not accepted by God. Angry that God doesn't accept him. Angry even, I think, that Abel's was accepted. And it might be the first warning about the danger of easy sin. We do what we want and then expect God to accept us. Now God in his kindness warns Cain. Look what he says in verse 6. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, Will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. It's a striking kind of phrase, isn't it? Sin is crouching at your door. And sin personified, like something which is ready to pounce, a ravenous animal. And you see what sin's desire is? To have you. To overcome you, to overwhelm you. This is quite some description of sin, isn't it? Sin is something which would overwhelm you. Its desire is for you, and not for a good thing. See, sometimes we can think, well, sin is easy, sin is good, sin feels fine, nothing bad seems to happen, and so we dabble with sin. It's just a little indulgence. No one will find out. What's the harm in a little sin? God was saying sin's crouching at your door, ready to consume you, to have you. And what happens in Cain's case? He doesn't listen to God, and in his anger at God, he lures his brother into the field, attacks and kills him. The first death in God's world. Brother against brother. Because of anger that God didn't accept an offering. You see, sin, when we allow it to have its way, has its way over us. And when God confronts Cain, again we saw with Adam and Eve, the hiding and the indifference, the getting away from it. So God says, where's Abel? Cain says, how should I know? I'm not his keeper. I don't need to take care of him. He's not my concern. But of course, while he says this, probably thinking God doesn't know, God knows. Listen to what he says, verse 10. What have you done? Listen. Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. What have you done? Abel's blood cries out for justice, and so Cain is punished. He was a farmer, but now the crops won't grow for him, won't respond, and so he will wander aimlessly, restlessly. And in verse 13, you get the sense that Cain maybe starts to realize just how awful this is. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is more than I can bear. Today you're driving me from the land, and I'll be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. He's realizing the consequences of his sin. Driven from God's presence to wander alone at risk from anybody who meets him. And he says it's too much. Your punishment goes too far. Notice no real remorse. No, I have sinned against my brother and against you. I don't deserve anything from your hand. Notice, you've just done too much to me, God. And yet even then, God shows kindness. He puts this mark on Cain. I don't really know what that mark is, but so that no one will kill him. He protects Cain. But do you see what sin does? Sin, which is crouching at the door, it destroys. Abel's life was taken. Cain's life was destroyed. He is cursed, a wanderer away from the presence of God. And you see there in verse 16, it says he lives in the land of Nod, east of Eden. When you read through these chapters at the beginning of Genesis, there's a constant movement. People move east of Eden. And they keep moving east of Eden, east of Eden, east of Eden. And the significance is, Eden was where God dwelt with the people. But the consequence of sin is that people move east of Eden, east of Eden, east of Eden, away from God's presence. And that's what sin does. And so one of the things that I think this chapter should show us is just how devastating sin is. It destroys relationship. It breaks us. It alienates us from God. And in the end, we are powerless before it. Nothing we can do because of it. It consumes us. So we become slaves to sin in our lives. And yet sin is so easy. And we think it won't matter. That nobody will know. And that we're comfortable with it. But sin crouches at our door, ready to consume us. And even for us, when we are saved by the death of Jesus, when the curse of sin is broken in our lives, sin still lurks in our lives. And we should flee from it. You know, Cain is quoted in the New Testament a number of times, but in 1 John 3, John tells us to love each other and uses Cain as an example to avoid. I put this on the screen as well? Yeah. For this is a message you heard from the beginning. We should love one another. Do not be like Cain, who belonged to the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his own actions were evil and his brothers were righteous. It's a serious warning, isn't it? Don't dabble with sin. You see, sin's not something we can sweep under the carpet. It's something we need to face. We can't just sweep it away in preference for speaking about other things, because sin is so serious and dangerous. But also sin is more complicated than just seeing the bad things that we do. Now in verses 17 to 24, we see culture growing, but at the same time sin grows. Culture grows and sin grows. You see, Cain in verse 17, he has children. He's this restless wanderer. He has children. And then there's development in the world. Look at verse 17. Cain was then building a city. And he named it after his son, Enoch. Isn't that a good thing? City being built. And then there's 7 generations of his family kind of mentioned after this. And we find that there are those who are the nomadic herdsmen raising animals. You imagine them, they're refining the stock so that they can produce better and better animals, better flocks. That's a good thing. And you see there in verse 20, Ada gives birth to Jabal. In verse 21, his brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all who played stringed instruments and pipes. I imagine Jubal, the first person he must have made them as well, do you think? He made these instruments, he made the pipes. I'd love to think they were the bagpipes that he made all the way back there. But music, is that not a really good thing? Do you not like music? Creating music is a good thing in our society. And then you get Tubal-Cain in the next verse, who forges all kinds of tools from bronze and iron. Developing the world. Imagine putting up a shelf without having any tools. Are tools not a good thing for us? And then you've got Lamech, who's even composing poems. Literature develops and grows. Are they not a good thing? Music to listen to. And I love listening to music. All sorts of different types of music, even songs that my children don't like listening to. But music's great, isn't it? The tools that we have are wonderful. Literature to read. I love sitting in an afternoon reading a book, or just before I go to bed, having a book to read. And people in our world still develop in all those different areas, don't they? And even wider, they create medicines which are amazing, help diseases be eradicated. Or the internet, which brings so many benefits to us, the amount of information that you can find, how to do things, and connect with people. There's a few things I do almost every week when I'm talking to somebody in another country. Really easily, I just sit at my desk and they are on the screen and we can have a chat and we can encourage and help each other. Wonderful inventions. You could go on for hours talking about them, couldn't you? Things to be celebrated, and yet at the same time, and in these verses as well, and the same thing happens in our world, as the culture grows, so does the sin. We see its effects. So Lamech, he's practicing polygamy. And then he boasts to his wives. He writes a poem for them to boast. Very cultured guy writing a poem for his wife. And what does he say? Look at verse 23. Just listen to what he says again. Ada and Zillah, listen to me. Wives of Lamech, hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. It's almost like an ancient rapper of his day who boasts in someone who bangs into him in the street and then he bashes him with a crowbar. Do you see how just over the top it is? Somebody hurt me a little bit, and so I have killed them. And if Cain, if he was going to be avenged 7 times, I'm much better than that. I'm going to avenge somebody 70 times 7. The violence that I will extort on those people is great. Blood will be spilt if anybody tries to cross me. It's horrific, isn't it? The violence is shocking in its intensity, and yet he's writing it in poetry. But is that not kind of what happens in our world? As good things grow, so does the sin that comes with them. The internet, such an amazing invention, and yet such evil perpetrated through it. The scammer who robs the vulnerable out of their earnings. The terrible sex trade, which means even children are abused for the benefit of others. The medicine trade with drugs which can help and heal, and drugs which are used and abused and cause so much harm to individuals and communities and families. Even this week, 2 acts in Parliament which mean people will die. The decriminalisation of abortion and then the assisted dying bill. Medical processes which were used to save lives now being used to take life. Good things developed by us used in evil ways. Sin is crouching at the door so that even the good things are tainted. And brothers and sisters, don't we not just need to see and understand that you almost can't separate those two things? Which is the opposite of often how we think, don't we? We think as we become more and more enlightened, as we make progress, as we move forward, then the world is going to get better and better, and we will be able to eradicate all the evil in the world. We'll have societies which are safer, fairer, with less evil, which are good ends to work towards, aren't they? But we also have to be realistic that as we make progress, that sin rears its ugly head in another way. As people will use the invention you've made for evil. The human heart is great in its capacity to do good things and great in its capacity to do evil. And so we have to see that the hope for the world is not found in technological advance or progress in society. You see, sin might be easy, might feel good, but it destroys. Great things can be done and to be celebrated, but evil still lurks. And so for us, it's not try harder to get rid of sin, making sure society is fair or have more education. The hope for us comes in the gospel. Hope comes for us in the gospel, which frees us from the power of sin, which also gives us a hope for the future, to be liberated from its bondage once and for all. And I think we see that here in this chapter as well. 'Cause last point this morning, briefly, hope for the serpent crusher. Did you notice how the chapter begins and ends? Often when you're reading the Bible, how a passage begins and ends helps you to understand what's going on in the middle. And at the beginning and the end, we have Adam making love to his wife and a child being born. At the beginning, it's Cain and then Abel. At the end, it's Seth. And you think, why does the writer here begin the chapter in that way and end the chapter in that way? I think it's significant. And I think the significance is this. In chapter 3, Eve was told that one of her offspring would crush the serpent's head as the serpent tried to strike his heel. There's going to be one who would come and destroy the power of evil. And I think as readers, you read it, chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, and you think, is it going to be Cain or Abel? And the chapter goes, you think, well, it's definitely not Abel because he's now dead. And Cain, well, now he is cursed and is a restless wanderer away from God. Where's the hope of God now? And at the end of the chapter, another child is born. Seth, is he going to be the one? Well, if you tracked Seth's family line forward, you would ultimately get to Jesus. And I think what we've been taught all the way back here is that God, when he makes a promise, will keep it. And he will be relentless in keeping his promises to us. It might seem slow, it was a long, long time before Jesus came. And yet God was relentless in keeping his promise, fulfilling it at just the right time. You see, so in this chapter, which exposes the destructive nature of sin and how it affects our world, we find that God's not abandoned his promise. God's not abandoned his world. The serpent crusher would come, and Jesus is that serpent crusher. And we read in that passage in Hebrews about Jesus, whose blood speaks a better word than Abel. It's always a slightly kind of odd kind of phrase. And you think, what's that on about there? And I think the point is this. Abel stands as the one whose blood on the ground cries out for justice to be done. Abel's blood says justice needs to be done. And if that's all we had against us, justice needs to be done, then we know that we are those who have turned from God in sin. But the blood of Jesus Christ, justice has been done. And now his blood cries, forgiveness is possible. There is a way that you can be forgiven and healed. There is blood which can break the curse of sin for us so that we can change. Jesus is the one who breaks the power of sin. And so let's get our perspective right, recognizing the danger of sin in our lives. Don't dabble with it. But also recognize your inability to fight it on your own. That sin grows and we can't stop it, but we can trust the one who can make a difference, whose blood will cry forgiveness, who gives us his Spirit to work in our lives. We can trust in the serpent crusher Jesus, whose blood was shed for us. And that's where hope is in this world. Well, let's have a moment just of quiet to reflect on those things. I'll pray, and then we'll sing. So a moment of quiet.
Your word is life to all who hear and obey. Your word endures forever.